The best way to learn a language? Immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards for you this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. For instance, I've been using Babbel's convenient courses to help me learn basic conversational skills in German while I'm getting ready for a little trip I'm planning. It's not a language I'd ever studied before, but I find the lessons really easy and kind of like hand-holding me through learning a completely new language to me. And it's reassuring to know that with the help of Babbel, I'll be able to greet people, order food, and ask for directions without having to consult language apps while I'm in Deutschland. I'm still learning. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/vulgar. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/vulgar, spelled BABBEL.com/vulgar. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Do you know what lies within nothing?
No.
Do you know where it ends? Do you want to know?
Yes. Counterbalance, a high fantasy audio drama. Season 2, coming 15th of October 2023. Learn more on trilunas.com.
Hello and welcome to Vulgar History. My name is Anne Foster and this is a feminist women's history comedy podcast. For this, the inaugural season of this podcast where I'm kind of figuring out what I'm doing and you're kind of figuring out what I'm doing, and we're all just sort of having a nice time figuring this all out because I'm just a woman in Saskatoon sitting in my apartment with a microphone. Anyway, that's all the more time for me to tell stories to you. And so thus far in this season, we've been looking at women who, quote unquote, misbehaved, because inspired by the famous quote by Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, well-behaved women seldom make history. We're looking at women who made history because they did not, quote unquote, behave well in various different ways. And we've looked at women whose personality just sort of like bucked against the societal expectations and what people thought a princess should be like. We've looked at women who just lived tits out and did a body swap to avoid anyone finding out that she was not a virgin, and then killed a man and then admitted to it. And both of those women were from noble families. And today we're looking at another woman who was sort of from a noble family, but basically was a regular everyday lady. And that's what I really wanted to get to a story like this early on in the show, just to establish we're not talking about just royals. We're not talking about just rich people. It just so happens that if you're looking at what women in history have been written about, they tend to be rich people and royals because other women just no one thought were interesting enough to write anything about, which is tragic. And that's why one day when I get a time machine, I want to go back and just hang out and see what life was like for the everyday people. Anyway, today we are looking at a woman whose full name is Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Rémy. Then she got married and she became Jeanne Comtesse de la Motte. We're just going to call her Jeanne with my Canadian French accent. Basically, she was descended from the bastard son of a French royal. So she had like that slight royal lineage, but the French royals had a lot of illegitimate children, so it didn't really do much for her. So basically, she was descended from the Valois family, who were the rulers of France for a while, and we're going to look at some other members of the Valois family perhaps in another episode. But basically, her great-grandfather was the illegitimate son of the French king Henry II. Because of these sort of royal roots, they had sort of an allowance that the royal family gave to everybody who was sort of like a descendant of a descendant of a descendant of a French bastard, which is like great, but also not so great because it was not super a lot of money. So Jeanne and her sister were both sent off to convent school, and the plan for them was to become a nun, but as we shall see, that did not suit Jeanne's personality whatsoever. Although she might have found her way to do lots of cool stuff as a nun as well, but basically she liked stuff. She liked jewels, and she liked wealth, and she liked gorgeous outfits, and because this was, what year was she born? She was born in 1756. So this is like edging up on like French Revolution era / Marie Antoinette / like she likes the big wigs, the hats, like she was somebody who was living in a material world. And she was a material girl, but she did not have very much money, but what she had was ambition. So after she basically left nunnery school, decided that wasn't for her, she went to stay with a family friend and then became pregnant with twins, which is just like, oh, if you're pregnant with twins and it's like the end of the 18th century, you just hope you don't die in childbirth. Basically, she did not. And like a month before she gave birth, she got married to a man who was the nephew of the family she was staying with. So she was married before she had the baby. She had baby twins, but they both died very, very young because infant mortality was pretty considerable then. And that did not stop her. So basically, her husband was a man named Nicolas de la Motte, who he called himself the Count or the Comte de la Motte, which was basically, I think, sort of a made up title that he just sort of called himself because he wanted to sound impressive, but actually he was just pretty boring and useless. And Jeanne, I'm guessing, again, she might have married him because of the whole pregnant with twins situation. The world and society she was living in, she had to marry the father of the twins or someone. Anyway, so she was not super into him because he was useless and she was just getting started living this amazing life that you're going to learn about. So she not only liked glamour and jewels and dresses and giant wigs, but she also sort of felt that they were owed to her because her family was descended from this illegitimate royal family member, and before that from an actual royal family member. So she just kind of saw, Marie Antoinette hanging out and felt like that should be me. I should be able to live this fancy, amazing life like she is leaving. So basically, she decided she wanted to get some more money. She wanted to get an increase in the allowance that she got as a descendant of a descendant of a descendant. And she's like, okay, who can she ask to give her this money that would actually give her this money when the French royal family was like paying this money to all these people and didn't have a lot to spare at the moment. And so she thought what she's going to do is talk directly to Marie Antoinette, like girl to girl. Just be like, hey, we're both like glamorous, amazing women. You get me, Marie Antoinette, like, can you please see about getting me more allowance money? And so the thing is, at the time, and I don't know all the details about how this whole situation goes, but it seems like anyone who's like dressed nicely enough could just like go to Versailles, which was where the French royal family lived, just go in there and hang out, which is like a pretty nice rule. So she figured she would just dress up nicely, go to Versailles, accidentally on purpose run to Marie Antoinette and be like, hey, can I get some more allowance money from you? But Marie Antoinette had heard about Jeanne, knew that she was sort of this like notorious sort of con artist type person and knew to basically avoid her. Meanwhile, in another part of Versailles, there was a man named Cardinal de Rohan who was basically on the outs with Marie Antoinette because he was obsessed with her and gross. he tried to stop her from marrying her husband, Louis XVI. And basically, she had kicked him out of court because he was gross and obsessed with her, and he would do anything to win her affection back, basically. So that's Cardinal de Rohan. Remember that name? Basically, Jeanne was like, okay, I can't get in to see Marie Antoinette, but I need to just figure out what's going on around court, learn where the goss is, and find a way that I can get close to Marie Antoinette and get this money, or find another way to get money. In the meantime, Jeanne took a lover who is a famous gigolo named Rétaux de Villette, and she also became the lover of Cardinal de Rohan. So she's married, took 2 lovers. Do it. Yes, just live your life. And so spending time with Rohan, she quickly learned he's obsessed with Marie Antoinette and just really wants to be friends with her again. So Jeanne was like, what a crazy coincidence. I happen to be totally great friends with Marie Antoinette, distant relative, etc. And if you want, I can put in a good word for you. If you, Cardinal de Rohan, pay me, Jeanne, just lots of money and jewels. And Rohan basically did. I mean, he gave her money and jewels, and she pretended that she was putting in a good word with Marie Antoinette, but she wasn't actually doing that. And this was just kind of a way for her to get money and jewels because she was all about that luxury lifestyle. And then the necklace. So I'm going to post a picture of the necklace on the Instagram, which is Vulgar History Pod at Instagram, just so you can understand what I'm talking about. It is the ugliest necklace in the history of, okay, it's I'll describe it to you, but just go to the Instagram to see this picture. So meanwhile, in another part of France, 2 jewelry makers had made the most expensive necklace in the history of jewelry, and was also, I would say, the ugliest necklace in the history of jewelry. These 2 men had made it because they had hoped that the previous king's mistress, so not Marie Antoinette's husband, Marie Antoinette's father-in-law's mistress, who is a woman named Madame du Barry, who we will talk about on another podcast, almost definitely. Basically, these jewelers had made this disgusting necklace, hoping that Madame du Barry would want to buy it. Then she died, and they were left with this extremely expensive necklace. That's okay. It's sort of if you made an apron out of diamonds, but really tacky with tassels at the bottom, connected to a multi-layered choker, also made of diamonds, and sort of held together with ribbons. It's sort of like a pinny, when you're playing sports in elementary school and you have to wear a pinny. It's like a pinny made of diamonds with jeweled bows on it and 4 tassels, 4 giant tassels. It's just so ugly, but there's so many diamonds on it. It was super expensive. And the thing is, so these jewelers have made this disgusting necklace, and they're okay, so Madame de Barry is dead, but let's try and get Marie Antoinette to buy it. But obviously Marie Antoinette would not buy it because it was disgusting looking and also insanely expensive. And she did not want to spend that much money. So they were just oh my God, we have this disgusting necklace. It costs so much money, but no one's buying it. So that means that we're actually sort of going bankrupt over just having it. Oh, and also the necklace itself was so heavy, it was uncomfortable to wear. So it was disgusting and impractical and heavy and uncomfortable to wear. So basically, it was this nightmare. They should never have made it. And Jeanne was this is the opportunity I've been waiting my whole life for. So she assembled her squad. And I have to say, having done just a couple episodes so far, when one of the women we talk about assembles a squad, I'm just oh shit, it's getting real. I love a squad. I love a team leader. So Jeanne put together a team of people for this, for her plan. So the squad was herself, her husband Nicholas, who was just kind of there, ballast. Her gigolo lover de Villette was also involved, and the mark was going to be Cardinal de Rohan. So the thing is that her lover de Villette was skilled at forgery, which is You know, he's a gigolo / forger. Like, that's good. Diversify your skill set. So he made fake letters that were allegedly between Marie Antoinette to Jeanne to make it look like the two of them were like super good friends, the two women. So she showed the letters to Rohan, and the letters were all saying, the letters were basically de Valois having written as though he was Marie Antoinette, saying like, I, Marie Antoinette, I want this disgusting necklace. I want this diamond apron that hurts the neck. Ugh, but this necklace is too expensive and my husband the king won't give me permission to buy it. If only someone like Cardinal de Rohan would like lend me the money so I could buy the necklace. So this is the letter. Like, de Valois wrote a letter from Marie Antoinette to Jeanne saying like, if only someone would loan me, Marie Antoinette, the money to buy this disgusting necklace, which is like quite a letter, basically, saying just exactly what Jeanne needed it to say for the whole plan to work. And so Rohan, Cardinal de Rohan, was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, Marie Antoinette wants money to buy this disgusting necklace. Like, if I loan her the money, then maybe she'll let us be friends again, even though I, Rohan, am totally creepy. And Jeanne was like, great. This is totally, you know what? I'm so happy to bring the two of you together in friendship. And I, Jeanne, I'll be the middleman. I'll be the intermediary. So I, Jeanne, will pick up the necklace from the jeweler's shop, and then I'll pick up Rohan's money, and then I'll exchange them, basically, but don't worry about it. The plan was like weirdly convoluted, and even de Rohan, who was willing to believe almost anything if it meant that he could be friends with Marie Antoinette, was like, this seems a little sketchy. So I'd just like to confirm with Marie Antoinette that this is all actually what she wants to have happen. And Jeanne was like, okay, you know, I'm not going to let this. She's got a plan and she's going to stick to her plan. And so what she did is she went out and she found a woman who looked a lot like Marie Antoinette. This woman, her name was Nicole Le Guay d'Oliva, who was a sex worker. And basically, Nicole was told to just like go to Versailles, dress up fancy, anyone could get in apparently, and just like sit in this garden in Versailles. And then when Rohan comes by, just kind of like be non-committal and like pretend like you like him. So Nicole went to the garden, dressed like Marie Antoinette, and just kind of was like, yeah, okay, smiled and nodded to what Rohan said. She agreed to forgive Rohan. She might not have even known she was impersonating the queen. She just knew to dress up fancy and go to Versailles, which is what she did. I can't see how she wouldn't know she was impersonating the queen. Like, Rohan probably must have called her, Your Majesty, etc. But anyway, so Nicole was just like, she got paid and she did her job, and great job, Nicole. So Nicole did what she needed to do, and Rohan was back on board. So Jeanne was sent out to do her like obvious plan. So she went to pick up the necklace from the jewelers, and the jewelers were told that Rohan was behind the purchase and Jeanne was sort of his like messenger person. But they were told that they couldn't give the necklace directly to the queen because, you know, the queen allegedly didn't want her husband to know about it. So they were told, give the necklace to Jeanne and she'll give it to the queen. And then the money Rohan will pay you later, basically. So Jeanne didn't pay the jewelers. They just gave her this, like, I don't even know, 50-pound diamond penny with tassels on the bottom. 4 tassels. It's like, you might think like, you know what? Are you just like exaggerating? It's like, no, it's like actively ugly looking. Like it's just so ugly. And now we're just going to take a break for a word from our sponsors.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But at Realm, we also sell some pretty cool merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. When you think about successful businesses like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, an often overlooked secret is the business behind the business that makes selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. That's because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret that's definitely worth talking about is that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. That's more happy customers and way more sales going If you're hoping to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
Ah, the web tour. Those that both creators and were created by the threads disentangle from the fringes to feast on the very thing that spawned them.
What's up, City? This is how you deal with fear!
No! Do not harm my children!
Oh, you lost a feather. Can I keep it?
No, you can't force me to!
Do you know what lies within nothing?
Rocket is in trouble, Akasa. Can we turn on the wind show remotely?
No, she could lose her job as an Akasar.
I don't fear Vehar.
No, but you fear me. If you intend to trick me, I will not hesitate to sever the oath bond entirely.
Why didn't you help me? Coward! I don't have a parachute! I don't like free falling!
Counterbalance, a high fantasy audio drama. Season 2, coming 15th of October 2023. Learn more on trilunas.com.
People often look at me with confusion when I ask them what their only one in the room story is. They think it has to be like mine, where I went to a 600-person event and discovered that I was the only Black person there. I know. Horrifying, right? Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart-Robbins, and I am the host and creator of the podcast Only One in the Room. Every week, my co-host Scott Slaughter and I invite you to join us for an hour and lose yourself in someone's only one story. This podcast is for anyone who's ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone.
And we're back. Anyway, she got the jewels, and then she brought the necklace to her husband, Nicholas. And then just like in that part in Ocean's 8, where Mindy Kaling was, she took the necklace apart, hiding off in the room. Nicholas disassembled the necklace into just like all separate diamonds. Side note, in Ocean's 8, there is a part where they're in the room with all the necklaces and the jewelry and stuff. And one of the necklaces there is in fact a replica of this necklace. I was like, oh my God, it's the necklace from this. So once you've seen the picture, maybe you'll know what I mean. Or maybe you saw that movie and you know this whole story and you're like, I noticed that too, and that was amazing. Anyway, so Nicholas took apart the necklace and he started just sort of like low-key selling the diamonds, like a few at a time at like different shops. So nobody thought like, why does this man have literally 50 pounds of diamonds? The jewelers, meanwhile, were like, why isn't anyone paying us for the necklace? And then they realized like, oh shit, we just clearly got conned. And then they had Rohan, Cardinal de Rohan, arrested for defrauding them because they thought he was one behind everything. They thought he had sent Jeanne there. They thought he was going to pay for it. Rohan, of course, didn't know that anything untoward was happening. And so he he also has no chill. So he just like squealed on everybody. So he said, basically, Jeanne, I think, was behind this, also de Valette, the gigolo, Nicole, the sex worker, and also he just, I can't remember exactly why this happened, but he also was like, and Count Cagliostro, which is just like, he just brought him in as well. So that's just happening. So all these people were brought in on this con, but the thing is, this is France. It's like just before the French Revolution happened. So like the people of France just like really hated the king and queen at the moment. They would believe any terrible thing anybody said about them. So even though Marie Antoinette had nothing to do with any of this, the letters were forged. She didn't want the necklace. She'd never been friends with Jeanne. She still hated Rohan, but everybody was just kind of like, ugh, Marie Antoinette, we know all about her. I bet she wanted the necklace. I bet she got Rohan to buy it for her. So like they were ready to believe the worst about her. And so the only way that Marie Antoinette and her husband figured they could prove their innocence was to have like a giant public trial for Jeanne and her co-conspirators. But plot twist, the very act of having a public trial basically backfired because Jeanne went up on the stand and she put on an amazing show. She just acted like a martyr, and she was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this position. Like, I never did anything bad a day in my life. And everybody, like, she just won everybody's sympathy. And everybody already was predisposed to hate Marie Antoinette and the king. So it didn't take a lot for Jeanne to win their sympathy, but still, like, she put on a show and she did a good job there. And there wasn't like newspaper, tabloid press, but there was like pamphlets. And so all these pamphlets got published about how like she was the true victim, and people like cheered her when she went in and out of court. And so eventually Cardinal Rohan, Nicole, and Count Cagliostro were all acquitted, although the two men were sent into exile. De Valette, the gigolo/forger, was also exiled from the country. And Jeanne was, despite having all this public sympathy, she was found guilty of basically being a con artist, and she was sentenced to be whipped, branded, and imprisoned. But even though like the whole squad were literally found guilty, Marie Antoinette was still super unpopular, and everybody still kind of blamed her for the whole thing. But, so you might think, that's it. Jeanne is going to be whipped, branded, sent to prison, and that's the last you ever heard of her. But that's not what happened. What happened is she disguised herself as a boy and escaped from prison, went all the way to London. Like, she crossed the waters to get from France all the way over to England. She went to London, and then she published her autobiography, which was called Memoirs of the Comtesse de Valois-Saint-Rémy, which was her sort of fake title she got from her husband, combined with her own actual sort of royal illegitimate name. Anyway, she disguised herself as a boy, went to England, and published her memoirs, which is how we know a lot of what we know about her. And so, like any good memoirist, she did her best to make herself come across as the heroine. She, just leaning into public sentiment, made Marie Antoinette seem like the bad guy in this whole situation. So this all seems like she might have then lived happily ever after in London as a popular memoir writer, just sort of like this famous person. But plot twist, she died at age 35, having fallen out of her hotel room window. So this is like, what? Basically, she was perhaps jumped out of her hotel window trying to escape from debt collectors, not to intentionally kill herself, but just to escape. But she apparently injured herself very badly, broken legs, just like awful. But also, like, did she jump? Was she pushed? I mean, nobody knows, but basically that is what happened. So she died in 1791, August 23rd, 1791, which was basically 2 years before Marie Antoinette herself was executed during the French Revolution. And so the two women were connected in this weird way. They both died within 2 years of each other. And if you want to pay your regards to this heroine, Jeanne is buried in London, where she died. She's buried in St. Mary's Churchyard in Lambeth in London, England. So first, I just super want to shout out where I first heard about this story. It's from an amazing book, literally one of the best books I think I've ever read in my life. True story. Is the true crime / historical nonfiction book, How to Ruin a Queen by Jonathan Beckman. He just gets in depth into all of this and just like explaining who Jeanne is, who her co-conspirators are, like what the mood was like in France, just like all the weird details of like literally this whole saga, which is just like, it's just like, how is this even a true story? Like every plot twist is just like, what? And then that, really? There's a couple movie versions of this. In 2001, there was a Hilary Swank movie that came out called The Affair of the Necklace. And that's what this whole thing became known as to history. The whole ugly necklace, tricking the jewelers into giving it to her, Marie Antoinette becoming the villain. Like, it's just known as The Affair of the Necklace. And that's also the title of the Hilary Swank movie, which is like, for costumes, great. For like hairstyles, great. But it really kind of overcompensates in trying to make Jeanne sympathetic, where she should just really be this like badass con artist, I think. But here they try and make it I don't know. It's just, they're trying to make you feel bad for her to like understand why she did this, where it's like, I understand why she did this. Like, she wanted a luxurious life and she saw what people were doing in Versailles. She was super smart and she did it. Anyway, the movie is worth seeing because every version of this story is worth seeing. And also Hilary Swank does a good job and the costumes and hair are super amazing. And actually, now I'm just remembering, that is where I heard about the whole thing to begin with before I even read the book. Frock Flicks is a website where costume designers talk about different costumes in different movies, etc. And they sort of explain what's accurate and what's not accurate. And so they did a post about this movie, The Affair of the Necklace, where they especially complimented how the wigs were so good in this movie. And I was like, what is this Affair of the Necklace? Then I looked it up. Then I found the Jonathan Beckman book. And here we all are, and our lives are so much better. There was a 1946 French film, L'Affaire du Collier de la Reine, so the affair of the necklace, basically in French. 1929, there was a German silent film called Cagliostro, and then the 1979 Japanese anime Rose of Versailles involved some of this stuff as well. And now it is time to get on to scoring this, basically, to see where Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Rémy de la Motte fits on our Scandalicious scale. So, I mean, if for some reason you haven't listened to the previous episodes of this podcast, this is where I score the story. Just not because I'm not scoring the people. I don't want to say that any person is any more valuable than any other person, but just like in terms of a story, how do these all rank? And then at the end of the season, we can see kind of like which was the most scandalicious story we went to. So there's 4 categories. The first of which is the eponymous Scandaliciousness score. So for Jeanne, we've got a lot. We've got a lot to work with here. We've got and again, like the scandaliciousness is like in the time and place where she lived. So the fact that she was 8 months pregnant with twins when she got married and she gave birth to the babies a month after the wedding, pretty scandaliciousness, like for the time and place. The fact that she, in short order, took 2 lovers, one of whom was a infamous gigolo / letter forger, scandalicious. The fact that she took up with Cardinal de Rohan, pretended she was friends with Marie Antoinette, and executed the entire affair of the necklace. I mean, we're getting into scheminess next, but in terms of scandaliciousness, just the fact that this is going to be a high score. I think there was no murder involved in this story, which is why I'm going to give her a 9 out of 10. Had there been, like, she had a squad, she had the, like, sexy, the affairs with the men, she had the baby a month after she was married, like, scandaliciousness is there, but I'm giving her a 9 out of 10 because there was no actual murder committed here. Not that murders should be committed, but in terms of like a story and how scandalicious is the story, that's how I'm grading her. Because the last episode, Frances Howard, I mean, she got a 10 for scandaliciousness and she deserved it. The next category is scheminess, and this is where I think Jeanne can really step up. So the complexity of her plan, like she took up with Rohan, figured out that he wanted to be friends with Marie Antoinette, found out about this ugly necklace, realized she could use the ugly necklace and Rohan's feelings for Marie Antoinette together so that she could get the necklace for herself, bringing in Nicole, the Marie Antoinette lookalike sex worker, like the levels of this, like, for scheminess, I think, I don't know, I don't want to like score everybody really high because then it's like, where can you go from there? But at the same time, I'm going to give her an 8 for scheminess because while this was amazing scheminess, and then the fact that she disguised herself as a boy to escape prison and went to England, like, her scheminess, super high. But I'll say, is basically, it was the one scheme, and it was an amazing scheme. But, like, to get a 10 in scheminess, I think you need to have, like, numerous schemes. So, 8 in scheminess. Significance is the next category, and this is an interesting one to think about because at the time, and I think this is what we're finding a lot of the stories, like these stories seemed huge at the time, but they became sort of more ephemeral. But the affair of the necklace was, I think, one of numerous factors, but it was one of the factors that really led to the French Revolution. Like this specific thing wasn't like the straw that broke the camel's back, but it just made everybody hate Marie Antoinette a little bit more, which just got everybody a bit more worked up. The fact that she was this martyr got everybody else more worked up. Like, the significance is not like she didn't throw the match that started the fire, but she was like, if the fire was a pile of hay, this was like a big old clump of hay in that fire. If that's a metaphor, I don't know. But overall, like the significance to like world history, I'm gonna give her a 3, I think. Like, it is significant, but we're gonna look at other people whose stories have more significance. The final scoring factor is the sexism bonus. And I wanna, I think, redefine that because the first 2 episodes we did were both wealthy, noble women. Jeanne kind of was noble, but she was also an impoverished peasant. So there's classism and there's sexism, and they go together, especially in these stories of women like Jeanne. So for this, we're looking at how much did the fact that she was a woman and that she was a poor woman, how much did that hold her back? How much did that affect her life? Like, if she had been a man in the society, how might things have turned out differently? And this is an interesting one. Again, I thought that this bonus would be much more apparent in figuring out these scores, but sort of like with Frances Howard, like Jeanne she was a woman, and it was a shitty time to be a woman. It was a shitty time to be a poor woman, but she kind of saw the cards she was dealt and went from there. So like, she got married young, pregnant, which is like probably not her fondest dream, but that kind of got her the marriage, so she was able to do that. Like, basically, she could have stayed in the nunnery, and that would have been an okay life, but she got married instead. She took the lovers. She had all this ambition, and she was able to pull off this plan because she was a woman. But I will say, had she been born a man with this much ambition and cleverness and drive, she may have not taken the fall quite as much as she did. Like, I think the fact that all the men involved in her scheme were sent into exile, whereas she was like whipped and thrown in prison. I mean, that's the sexism right there. So everybody, as far as I can imagine, is always going to get at least a 5 in the sexism area. Lower class women would also get the sexism/classism. I'm going to give her a 7 in this category, which adds up to 27. She gets a 27 out of 40, which is, I think, the highest score of anybody yet. And I mean, well deserved. The whole like well-behaved women seldom make history thing. She is like such an example of a woman who we know about her. Well, firstly, because Jonathan Beckman wrote that amazing book, because Frogflix did the review of the Hilary Swank film, and because I'm doing this podcast now. But we know about her. Like, she wrote her own autobiography. Oh, I forgot she wrote her own autobiography. I'm not going to reconsider her score. Like, I'm happy with the score, but just like, she was a legend. Like, she made sure that we all knew who she was. Like, the actions she did, she reframed them herself, writing her biography, like these pamphlets that came out about her. Like, she got the free publicity and she just leaned into it. Like, she epitomizes well-behaved women seldom make history, because like, nothing about her was well-behaved, except she pretended like she was when she was. It's almost like a Scarlet Pimpernel scenario, speaking of revolutionary France, where she's just like, seems like this sort of like, you know, lovely lady hanging out in Versailles, just being whatever, while secretly in the shadows, she's like this criminal mastermind. And I wish she had lived longer. I wish she had done more schemes. I wish there's more to know about Jeanne But, I mean, considering she only lived to be 35, she really made herself a legend. And for that, I respect her. And I mean, a score. She's got the high score so far, 27 on our Scandaliciousness scale. So this is Vulgar History. My name is Anne Foster, and I've got all social media things all set up. The previous episodes that I recorded, I didn't have that stuff ready, but now I can tell you all about it. So on Instagram, we are at Vulgar History Pod. On Twitter, we are at Vulgar History. And let me know what you think about Jeanne, about her score of 27 out of 40. Would you have scored her higher? Would you have scored her lower? Who else do you think would be a good episode to talk about? You can also check out on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter. And if you become a patron, one of the perks you get is you can vote on a poll, which is helping to figure out who should I do more podcasts about, or who should I write blog posts about, because there's a never-ending supply of amazing and interesting women I keep finding out about. You know, it's like any internet sort of black hole. Like, you look up a thing and then you click on that and then you find out something else and then something else, and then suddenly you're just like, oh my God, who is this obscure story I've never heard about? And the next thing you know, I'm in the university library reading like articles, like trying to find out about somebody that not a lot of people have talked about before. It's exciting. I love finding an exciting story. And again, for this one, which is just like one of my favorite stories ever, I can't recommend enough How to Ruin a Queen by Jonathan Beckman. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And otherwise, I guess I will talk to you all next time. Have a great week, everybody. Vulgar History is hosted, written, and researched by Anne Foster and edited by Christina Lumagi.
Welcome to the small town of Chinook, where faith runs deep and secrets run deeper. In this new thriller, religion and crime collide when a gruesome murder rocks the isolated Montana community. Everyone is quick to point their fingers at a drug-addicted teenager, but local deputy Ruth Vogel isn't convinced. She suspects connections to a powerful religious group. Enter federal agent V.B. Laureau, who has been investigating a local church for possible criminal activity. The pair form an unlikely partnership to catch the killer, unearthing secrets that leave Ruth torn between her duty to the law, her religious convictions, and her very own family. But something more sinister than murder is afoot, and someone is watching Ruth. Chinook, starring Kelly Marie Tran and Sanaa Lathan. Listen to Chinook wherever you get your podcasts.
With your long-forgotten name, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
In the words of the unspeakable language, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
By the spilt blood of the wicked, who walk upon this world sprouting the words of false idols, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
On the land of the dead harvest, that which brings the earth itself into your service, Yamal, we call upon you.
We call upon you. We call upon you. We call upon you.
Yamal calls upon you.
The Sprouting, a Call of Cthulhu actual play podcast by Blighthouse Studio. Find us on your podcatcher of choice.